Coming up on Network Africa, Cameroon's 92-year-old President Paul Biya is declared winner of the heavily disputed election by the Constitutional Council. Cote d'Ivoire's Electoral Commission announces preliminary election results pointing to an overwhelming victory for current President Alassane Ouattara. Plus, United Nations pleads for safe passage for civilians that are trapped in the war-hit El-Fasher, Sudanese region. A warm welcome to the program. I'm Layo Olarinde. Here's a summary of events and happenings that made headlines over the weekend.
On Sunday, at least 4 people were killed in clashes with the security forces in the commercial hub of Douala. This was ahead of the official announcement of results of Cameroon's highly contested presidential election. Officials say the police posts had come under attack and security forces had defended themselves. Hundreds of supporters of opposition presidential candidate Issa Chiroma Bakary defied a ban to hold protests in several cities, clashing with the security forces. Mr. Issa Chiroma Bakary had already declared himself the winner, saying the Constitutional Council will announce a tainted result on Monday. On Saturday, Ivorian citizens headed to the polling stations as the country began its presidential elections. Incumbent Alassane Ouattara is seeking a 4th term in office. The 83-year-old won a 3rd term in 2020 after a constitutional change that reset presidential term limits. Under the 2016 charter, he is permitted to run again, potentially securing a 4th mandate. 4 other candidates are also in the running, including former First Lady Simone Gbagbo. The opposition leader also cast her vote on Saturday in Abidjan, participating in the country's presidential election in the presence of heavy security. Election observers described the vote as peaceful. However, some Ivorians pointed to low voter turnout, blaming the exclusion of key opposition figures. The Senegal's Regional Museum inaugurated an exhibition showcasing 8 historical objects from the Battle of Samba Sadio, 1875, returned temporarily from France by the cultural organization Alternatives. The artifacts are made of leather, wood, and metal, including a hammer, a bridle with its bit, 2 bull bags, 2 amulets, a case, and a Quranic tablet, reportedly belonging to Cheikho Amadou Ba, a renowned religious and resistance leader in northern Senegal. The exhibition, running until October 31st, highlights the ongoing efforts to reclaim and repatriate African cultural heritage taken during the colonial era.
Well, Cameroon's 92-year-old President Paul Biya has been declared winner of the country's October 12th presidential election. According to the Constitutional Council, Biya got 53.7% of the vote compared to the 35.2% of his main challenger, Issa Chiroma. It does, however, note that voter turnout in this year's election was at 58%. Biya is the only president most Cameroonians have known, as more than 60% of the 30 million strong population is below the age of 25. He defied calls to step down and has been criticized for only showing up for one campaign rally, where he promised voters that the best is yet to come. The governing party has hailed his victory as a sign of greatness and hope. Well, it appears only the ruling party is celebrating Paul Biya's win today. A number of Cameroonians who have spoken to international media have described Biya's win as being at the beginning of another nightmare. Citizens complain of a decline in economy, endemic corruption, and youth unemployment. There have been protests in Cameroon even before the announcement of results, with a crackdown on supporters of the main opposition challenger, Issa Chiroma. Close allies of Chiroma have been arrested by security forces over the last 48 hours. Chiroma had declared himself winner of the polls, even releasing his own version of the results. Protesters have been on the streets demanding to see the final results from the Electoral Commission and also rejecting any declaration of Biya as president. The clampdown continues on the protesters as the Interior Minister Paul Nji says the unrest will not be tolerated. In the meantime, Chiroma's residence in the northern city of Garoua has come under attack. Reporters at the scene speak about gunshots being heard. Chiroma himself wrote on Facebook that gunfire was being directed at civilians gathered outside his home. He later alleged that 5 snipers have been stationed on the house across from his and firing on the people. He also later confirmed in a statement that 2 people had been shot dead. Demonstrations have also broken out in Douala, the country's economic capital, following the announcement of the results. It's a tense atmosphere we're seeing in Cameroonian capital, Yaoundé, resulting in the closure of almost all shops and schools. Even civil servants have mostly stayed at home, as have other office workers. Well, joining me now is National Secretary, Nigerian Union of Journalists here in Nigeria, and African Affairs Analyst Achike Chude. Achike, it's great to see you today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Lyle.
Well, there was a slimmer of hope things could change in Cameroon this time around with the presidential election, but they did not. Why do you think Paul Biya won?
Well, it is good you described it as a sliver of hope, because I can tell you that the vast majority of Cameroonians, and not just Cameroonians, because the whole world has been watching the drama unfolding in Cameroon in the past few decades, especially since he removed the term limit in 2008. So for 17 years, there has not been a term limit for the government to change government in Cameroon through elections. And so it is it is something. The result of the election is something actually that was expected. People felt so because it has happened so many times, and I'm not sure that people expected that thunder will not strike multiple times. So it was only inevitable that this was going to happen. Obviously, what you're talking about in Cameroon is a situation of a state capture, where the people no longer have play a determining role in what happens in the governance of in their own governance. And so you have a few people who have taken over political power and the levers of government and decide what happens, ultimately at the end of the day. And election, of course, is just an instrument to continue the perpetuation of these people, this small group of people in power. And the arrowhead of this is obviously Paul Biya, though he is not in control of the situation around him, but he is being used by a lot of other people, just a few group of people, to remain in power almost in perpetuity. I think what has happened is that this election has shown that it is very clear that Paul Biya intends to die in power. He's old, he's 92, going to 93. By the time he serves out this new 7-year tenure, if he's still alive by then, of course, every man, nobody wishes him ill health, nobody wishes him death, but that is the way. That's inevitable for every man and woman, who must face that final reality of our existence. So obviously it's going to be about 100 years by the time this tenure is served out, and there lies the tragedy of the Cameroonian situation.
Yeah, and that would be my next question to you. His age, he's currently 92, he would be 99 by the end of his 8th term. Realistically, what can he do for the people of Cameroon?
Well, at 92, he was promising a lot of things. He said he was talking about the urgency of the current situation in Cameroon. That was why he wanted to run. And so he was obviously running against himself because there has not been any president in Cameroon for about 42 years. So if he wanted to change the situation of unemployment, it is an employment situation that he created. If he wanted to change the situation want to talk about the situation of infrastructure. Doing sort of infrastructure, it is a situation that he helped create in Cameroon all these years. So he's essentially running against his inability or his incompetence to change the situation in Cameroon. And that is the irony, that is the tragedy. Remember that the daughter was seen campaigning against the father. Obviously, perhaps the daughter, just as I had said the other time, felt that this had become a matter of elder abuse and that the father was being used by some other people to perpetuate themselves in power. At 92, this he came to power at around 40-something years, maybe around 46, 40-something years, a very, very long time ago, around 1980s, around the 80s or so. And all of these years, when he was in his prime, fairly young, he was not able, with a lot of energy, he was not able to do anything. And then all of a sudden, he now realizes that at 92 years, he has the energy, he has the power. He's been going in and out of hospitals, outside Cameroon, all this while. And so it's very clear to everybody that this is somebody that has been on the decline for a very, very long time ago, and somebody that belongs in the home where he can be looked after by his children or some other, people, but definitely not being in a position to handle the crisis of governance that involves tens of millions of Cameroonians. So his election is the loss of Cameroon, is the loss of his citizens. And you can see what is going on in Cameroon right now.
Yes, there have even been reports of shooting just today after the announcement at the opposition Chiroma's house. 2 people have been killed. What sort of precedents do you think this sets?
So what kind of precedents?
Yes.
Did you say precedents?
Yes.
Well, the precedents, the president was set a long time ago. The precedents, was set by the, Biya. It was set by the former president of Gabon. It was set by a lot of the civilian dictators that we have in the African continent. By Hufred Bouani, even before he left, he had spent over 20-something years in power. It was also set by the former president of Sudan. And of course, you see that since he left the scene, Sudan has been in perpetual crisis. So the precedence is something that even the African Union has complained about. Apart from the fact that they have been talking about good governance in order to discourage soldiers from coming out of the barracks. But again, it leaves a sour taste in the mouth of a lot of people. That at this stage, with the numerous crises of governance that we have in many countries in the African continent, that some of these people just feel that without them, that their countries are not going to function properly. And of course, if there's any crisis that these people, that their countries are in, it is the crisis that they themselves create. So perhaps they feel that since they are the ones that created this crisis, that they have the magic wand to take their countries out of this crisis. It's an irony, really.
Thank you so much, National Secretary, Nigerian Union of Journalists and African Affairs Analyst Achike Chude. Thank you for speaking to us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, let's take a break now on the program. Still to come. Mali shuts down schools and universities even as jihadists blockade worsens the fuel crisis in the country. Please join us again. Welcome back to the program. Let's check in on another election in Africa, this time in Côte d'Ivoire. The Electoral Commission says it is highly likely that incumbent President Alassane Ouattara will get his 4th term after all. The IEC is still counting ballots in various voting districts, and if the preliminary results are confirmed, the 83-year-old Ouattara will embark on his fourth mandate. The politician is controversial as protest against his long-term reign and increasingly authoritarian regime has been severely repressed in recent months. Mr. Ouattara has also been criticized for barring the two leading opposition candidates from the presidential elections. Tijani Thiam and Laurent Gbagbo were prevented from participating in the race over grounds of nationality and criminal record, respectively. Although four other opposition candidates, among them Gbagbo's wife, Simone Yvette Gbagbo, ran for president, none of them had sufficient funds nor notoriety to pose a serious threat to Ouattara. Turning to the fighting in Sudan, the United Nations has called for safe passage for civilians trapped outside of the city of El-Fasher. This is after paramilitary fighters announced they had seized control of the army base there. The Sudanese military has not acknowledged loss of the site, which would be a significant victory for the Rapid Support Forces RSF in this ongoing civil war. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the latest fighting marks a terrible escalation in the conflict, adding that the suffering of civilians is unbearable. El-Fasher is the last army foothold in the vast western region of Darfur and has been besieged by the RSF and its allies for 18 months. Well, staying with Sudan, the Rapid Support Forces claim they have seized full control of the 6th Infantry Division headquarters in El-Fasher, capital of North Darfur State. RSF spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Al-Fatah Qureshi hailed the operation as a great victory in a statement issued following the fighting. He described the event as a pivotal turning point in the war, saying it would shape the new state the RSF envisions for Sudan. The ongoing conflict between the Sudanese military and the RSF, which erupted in April 2023, has devastated the country, killing more than 20,000 people, injuring 33,000, and displacing around 12 million, and also leaving over 25 million people facing acute food insecurity, according to UN estimates. In March 2025, the Sudanese army announced it had regained control of the capital, Khartoum, while the RSF said it had repositioned its forces across several fronts in line with its objective to resolve the battle in favor of the Sudanese people. Well, there's not a war going on in Mali, but the government has been unable to curb a fuel scarcity caused by a blockade on fuel imports by jihadi militants. Education Minister Amadou C. Savane announced on state television classes would have to be suspended for 2 weeks due to disruptions in fuel supplies that are affecting the movement of school staff. Militants from the Al-Qaeda-backed Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslim group, JMIN group, announced a ban on fuel imports from neighboring countries into Mali in early September, squeezing the landlocked country's fragile economy and leaving hundreds of fuel trucks stranded at the border. Most schools and universities have been shut as a result. Endless queues at fuel stations and fuel scarcity has also affected the price of commodities and transportation. The Malian military attempted to escort some fuel trucks from border areas to Bamako. Some trucks arrived, but others were attacked by the militants. The education minister said Sunday that authorities were doing everything possible to restore normal fuel supplies before schools resume classes on November 10. The Democratic Republic of Congo is said to be facing one of its worst cholera outbreaks in decades. The crisis is said to be spreading rapidly into provinces where the disease was not previously endemic. Scientists have attributed the spread to cross-contamination, lack of clean water, and the public's discipline in hygiene. Cholera has spread to 20 of the DRC's 26 provinces. Doctors Without Borders, MSF, reported urging a swift international response. The Health Ministry recorded over 58,000 suspected cases and up to 1,700 deaths in the first 9 months of 2025. Frequent and heavy rains trigger the fast spread of the disease through water contaminated with Vibrio cholerae, which infects the intestines and causes acute diarrhea and vomiting. Turning to South Africa, which has officially been removed from the list of the Financial Action Task Force, FATF. The decision was made at the body's last meeting in Paris, France. It's good news for South Africa, and experts say the decision boosts investor confidence, but they caution that the real test lies ahead, keeping the system clean. But Dr. Elna Moolman is the chief economist at Standard Bank South Africa. Here's what she had to say on this development.
South Africa's removal from the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF's grey list, is a very positive development. It clearly demonstrates that government and the private sector can work together to address South Africa's challenges, because getting removed from this grey list required a broad range of interventions. We are, of course, also seeing similar progress in terms of other policy reforms where both government and private sector inputs are required. Initially, we saw that with addressing the electricity sector's challenges, and we're increasingly seeing that in addressing the logistics sector's challenges. If we can implement all of these growth reforms, it will be very positive from an economic growth rate perspective, and that would help us to reduce unemployment and to improve government's fiscal metrics. On its own, South Africa's removal from this grey list is positive, and it will boost sentiment, and it will make it a little bit easier for investors to invest in South Africa. But it won't necessarily on its own immediately and materially boost economic growth. For that to happen, we also need to see progress with other policy reforms.
The African Union Commission chairperson Mahmoud Ali Youssef has urged nations to pursue greater unity and work towards improving the lives of their citizens. He was making the call during the 11th annual Tana Forum in Addis Ababa on Saturday. The 11th Tana High-Level Forum on Security wrapped up in the country on October 26, bringing together African heads of state and lawmakers for 3 days of discussions on peace, security and development across the continent. This year's forum was held under the theme Africa in an Evolving Global Order and reaffirmed the continent's commitment to strengthening regional ties and improving diplomatic relations. And as we end the program today, here's our fun fact about the continent. Did you know Cameroon is nicknamed Africa in miniature because it contains many of the continent's ecosystems? It is the only country named after a crustacean, the shrimp. The name Cameroon comes from the Portuguese word Cameros, meaning shrimp, which explorers used to describe the Wouri River in 1472. The country is also home to the world's largest frog, the Goliath frog, which can grow up to 34 centimeters long and weigh 3.3 kg. And that's it on the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olande.